My mom invited my abuser to Christmas dinner and told me to act normal, so I never came home again and spent the holidays on a beach in silence. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and for most of my life, Christmas meant joy, family, and warmth until it didn't. Growing up, I was the responsible one, the quiet observer who always tried to keep the peace. I loved the little traditions my family had, decorating the tree while Dad played his old jazz records. Helping Mom bake cookies she insisted smelled better than anyone else's. But even in those early years, there was tension underneath the glitter. Mom had a favorite, my younger sister, who could do no wrong, whose mistakes were always shrugged off as cute or innocent. I learned to stay in the background, to step lightly, to never rock the boat. Dad was often distant, lost in work or his own distractions, and I became the one who noticed the little cracks, the sideways glance at my accomplishments, the subtle sighs when I asked for help, the unspoken rules that kept me in my place. Then there was him, the person who had left marks deeper than any holiday argument could explain. I won't go into all the details, but he was someone who took advantage of my trust when I was younger, someone whose presence still sent shivers down my spine months, even years later. I'd worked hard to build boundaries, to convince myself that home, my family's home, was supposed to be safe, a sanctuary. I never imagined those boundaries could be tested in the place I once thought I could always run to. So when my phone buzzed with Mom's message about this year's Christmas plans, it was short, cheerful, almost too casual. Looking forward to seeing you this Christmas? Can't wait for everyone to be together. But there was something in the tone and offhandedness that made my heart race. My mind immediately leapt to worst-case scenarios, and a small, uneasy voice whispered, "Something's wrong." I sat there, staring at the screen, debating if I should go. The thought of skipping felt guilty, impossible. But the idea of walking back into that house, into that fragile, carefully hidden tension made my chest tighten. I didn't know it yet, but this year's Christmas wouldn't be about joy or cookies or soft jazz at all. Something had shifted, and I was about to be faced with a choice I couldn't ignore. The next day, I called Mom, trying to keep my voice calm, casual even, though my hands were shaking. "Hey, about Christmas. Is everyone really going to be there?" I asked, trying not to sound panicked. "Oh, of course, sweetie. It's the holidays. Everyone's coming." "You'll love it," she replied, her tone bright, almost sing-song, but something underneath it made my skin crawl. I hesitated, my throat tight. I mean, everyone? Even? You know, him?" The words felt heavy, almost impossible to speak aloud. There was a pause. The kind that feels like your chest is being pressed down by invisible hands. Then she said cheerfully, "Yes, he'll be there. But just act normal, okay? It's Christmas. Don't make it awkward." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My fingers tightened around the phone. Act normal? After everything? My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to tell her that normal ended the day he crossed a line I could never forget. But instead, I whispered, "Okay," and hung up before I could say more. For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate on anything. The smell of coffee felt bitter, my apartment too quiet, and every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Thinking it was another reminder of what awaited me, I walked to the window, staring at the street below, the soft hum of holiday lights mocking the storm inside me. I could almost see the Christmas tree at home, the laughter, the smells of roasting turkey, and him, sitting there grinning as if he belonged. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she doesn't understand. Maybe she thinks I can handle it. Maybe it'll be fine. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. My boundaries, my sense of safety, were already being ignored by evening. I sat on the edge of my bed, the glow from the streetlights falling across my apartment, feeling a mix of dread and helplessness. I had to decide. Go back to the house I once loved and risk reliving trauma, or finally choose myself. Even if it meant defying my family, I couldn't sleep that night. Staring at the ceiling, imagining Christmas dinner in all its twisted normalcy, and wondering if I had the courage to say no, sleep didn't come, not that night or the next. Every time I closed my eyes, memories of him crept in small things at first. A laugh, a touch, the way he always made me doubt myself. And then the bigger moments, the manipulations, the betrayals, the nights I felt frozen and powerless. I had spent years trying to shove those memories into a box, labeling them past and promising myself I was stronger now. But Mom's message had yanked the box open, and every lock I thought I had was gone. I paced my apartment, running my fingers over the arm of the couch, the worn cushions beneath my palms grounding me, and I tried to imagine what Christmas would be like. I could almost hear his voice, smirking across the table, telling the same jokes he always did, the same ones that made me feel small. My chest tightened, my stomach turned. Every holiday smell, every flicker of tree lights on Instagram made me feel nauseous. How could Mom not see this? How could she just invite him like nothing ever happened? I called my best friend, Sarah, and her voice was the only thing keeping me from panicking. He's coming. Mom invited him? Are you serious? She asked, a mix of shock and fury in her tone. I would never wait. How can she even? I know, I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips. I don't understand, she said. I should just act normal. Like everything's fine. Like it didn't happen. There was a long silence on the line. Then Sarah said firmly, you don't have to go. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. You're allowed to protect yourself. Her words should have comforted me, but instead they made my guilt flare. I'd spent so many years believing family came first, that keeping the peace was more important than my feelings. Now I felt trapped between fear and obligation, between the idea of a perfect Christmas and the reality of walking into a room that would feel like a battlefield by the time I hung up. My mind was made up in a way I hadn't expected. I wouldn't just survive Christmas this year, I had to decide whether I could survive it at all. I swallowed hard and dialed Mom again, my thumb hovering over the call button for what felt like an eternity. My chest thumped so loudly, I thought she could hear it on the other end. When she picked up, her voice was the same cheerful sing-song I'd heard before, like nothing could ever be wrong. Hi, honey. Are you excited for Christmas? She chirped. I forced myself to speak clearly, though my voice trembled. Mom, can we talk about? Him, a pause. Then, oh, I know it might feel weird, but really, you'll be fine. It's just a holiday dinner. Just act normal, okay? Her words hit me like a slap. Act normal? She had no idea. She didn't understand that normal ended the day he crossed the line I could never forget. My hands shook as I gripped the phone. Mom, you're asking me to pretend that nothing happened? To smile? To sit at the same table? To watch him laugh while my voice broke? Sweetie, it's Christmas. You're overthinking it, she interrupted. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the one I'd learned to ignore all my life. The one that told me my feelings didn't matter. I wanted to scream. To tell her everything, the fear, the panic, the nights I spent replaying his face, over and over in my mind. But instead, I whispered, I don't know if I can do that, and ended the call before the words turned into tears. The rest of the day was a haze of anxiety and agitation. I walked around my apartment, hearing the faint echoes of holiday songs from neighbors' radios, smelling the cinnamon and pine from the fake tree I'd bought for myself years ago. Everything should have felt comforting, familiar, festive. But every sound, every scent, reminded me of what awaited me at home. The pressure to smile, to act normal, to pretend nothing had happened. By evening, I found myself standing at the window, staring at the darkened streets and flickering lights, thinking about my choices. Go home and force a smile through the tension, or break the cycle entirely and stay away. My heart pounded, and I knew deep down that whichever path I chose, nothing would ever be the same. And then, in the quiet hum of my apartment, I made the first decision that would change everything. By the next morning, I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. The thought of sitting at that table across from him, with Mom insisting I smile, made my chest feel like it was being crushed. I spent hours pacing my apartment, trying to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting. that maybe I was being too sensitive. But every memory, every flashback to the abuse, made my stomach twist into knots. I couldn't go through it again. I opened my laptop and started searching, almost frantically. Hotels, last-minute flights, secluded rental zeneware. I could disappear for a few days. The idea of being anywhere but there terrified me. But it was the only way I could breathe without my panic spiraling out of control. My hands shook as I typed out messages to friends, asking for help, for support, for someone to tell me I wasn't being dramatic, that I wasn't overreacting. When Sarah replied almost immediately, her words were fierce and protective. You do not owe them a single second of your safety. Go somewhere safe. You deserve peace. Don't even think twice about it. I nodded, even though she wasn't in the room. Her words were balm to my frayed nerves, but they also forced me to confront the guilt. I had spent my life believing that family always came first, that traditions mattered more than feelings. Could I really break that cycle? By afternoon, I had booked a small cabin on the beach a few hours away, a place where no one knew me, where the waves and the wind could drown out the chaos of home. My heart was pounding, half from fear, half from relief. I packed quietly, avoiding my roommates, making sure no one would stop me, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was choosing myself. As I zipped up my bag, I paused by the door. Looking at the apartment I'd called home for years, part of me ached for the traditions I was abandoning, for the family who didn't seem to understand me, and for the Christmas I'd imagined. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. This year, I wasn't going to survive Christmas. I was going to escape it. And as I slipped out into the cold evening air, I couldn't help but wonder, if I never came back, would they even notice? The drive to the beach felt surreal, like I was slipping out of one life and into another. The headlights cut through the night, illuminating stretches of empty road. And for the first time in years, I felt the tight knot in my chest loosen just a little. Every mile away from home was a mile toward silence, toward peace, toward reclaiming a part of myself that I'd spent decades suppressing when I finally arrived. The cabin was small but cozy, nestled between dunes and the restless waves. The salty air hit me immediately, sharp and cleansing, and I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of everything I'd been carrying begin to lift. The faint roar of the ocean and the smell of wet sand felt like a balm, soothing nerves that had been frayed by years of tension and trauma. I dropped my bags and leaned against the doorway, staring out at the moonlight glinting off the water, thinking, this is it. I can't go back. Not yet. Not ever, maybe. I unpacked slowly, deliberately, creating a small, safe space for myself. Every item I set down, my toothbrush, a notebook, a blanket, felt like a tiny act of defiance, proof that I was choosing me. I made coffee, let it steam in my hands, and for a moment I just sat in silence, listening to the waves crash. The peace was almost too much. After years of constant fear and guilt, I wasn't sure how to feel it. Then I reached for my phone. There were messages from Mom, short and chipper. Can't wait to see you. In a group text with family chatter about Christmas plans. My stomach dropped. She hadn't changed anything. He was still going to be there. She expected me to just... My chest tightened and I felt a surge of anger. How could she invite him after everything? How could she expect me to smile and act normal while he was in the same house? I sank onto the couch, staring at the floorboards, heart pounding. For the first time, it hit me fully. She wasn't going to protect me. She hadn't even considered my safety. And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. That night, I sat on the small porch of the cabin, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the waves crash against the shore. The air was crisp, salty, and full of a quiet that I hadn't felt in years. No one to tell me to smile. No one to demand I act normal. No one to make me small. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself breathe. I pulled out my journal, the one I'd kept since college, and wrote everything: the fear, panic, the betrayal, the guilt. Words spilled out of me faster than I could keep up with, each sentence a release, a confession to myself rather than anyone else. I remembered the first Christmas after he had hurt me. The one where I'd forced a smile while my stomach twisted, pretending everything was okay. And now, here I was, hundreds of miles away, alone on a beach. And I realized just how much power I had reclaimed by leaving. But even in the calm, the anger simmered beneath the surface. Messages from Mom and my sister kept popping up, pictures of the tree being decorated, cookies being baked, laughter being shared, and he was there. My stomach churned, and I felt that familiar pang of fear and nausea. It was almost surreal being safe. And yet, feeling the pull of everything I had escaped, I made a cup of tea and sat back, letting the warmth seep into my fingers, trying to ground myself. The wind tugged at my hair, the stars shimmered above, and for a moment I thought I might actually sleep tonight. But then, a notification lit up my phone, a picture of him, smiling, holding a glass at the dinner table, with Mom grinning beside him. My hands shook. I dropped the phone onto the porch floor and stared out at the ocean, waves glowing under the moonlight. Every instinct screamed that she had chosen him over me. Every memory of the abuse pressed against the walls I had built to protect myself. And for the first time I understood fully, my family wasn't going to be the safe place I had always believed it to be. I curled up in the blanket, heart racing, thinking, what am I going to do next? The next morning, I woke to the sound of seagulls and the steady rhythm of waves hitting the shore. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to forget everything, to just exist, wrapped in the salty breeze and the soft hum of the ocean. The isolation was comforting, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. I could walk barefoot in the sand, let the water lap at my feet, and hear nothing but my own thoughts. But even in that quiet, the tension lingered. Every memory of home, every flash of that Christmas table made my chest tighten. I thought about Mom's words, just act normal, and felt a mix of disbelief and fury. How could she demand I pretend to be okay with him after everything he had done? How could she dismiss my pain as if it were trivial? I sipped my coffee slowly, staring at the horizon. Letting the bitterness ground me while the anger bubbled beneath the surface, I decided to take a walk along the beach. The sand soft beneath my toes, the cold water nipping at my ankles. I tried to reflect, to process the layers of trauma I had carried for years. The way my family had ignored it, and the ways I had ignored myself to keep the peace. I whispered into the wind, admitting truths I had never allowed anyone to hear. I'm scared. I'm angry. I feel abandoned. I deserve better. As the sun climbed higher, glinting off the waves, I realized something profound. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to go back to pretend, to swallow the fear and guilt, just to make them comfortable. For the first time, I felt a flicker of empowerment. My safety, my peace, and my sanity were mine to protect. And yet, even as I let myself feel that strength, a creeping fear lingered. What if leaving wasn't enough? What if she never understood? What if he showed up somewhere else, somehow reminding me that I couldn't escape completely? I paused, staring at the horizon, the waves endlessly rolling in, and wondered, how far would I need to go to truly be free? By the third day on the beach, the calm I'd been clinging to began to fracture. The waves, once soothing, now felt like a mirror of my racing thoughts, relentless and impossible to escape. I realized that no matter how far I ran, the memories, the guilt, the anger, they were still inside me. The isolation that had felt like freedom at first was starting to feel like a trap, and I felt that old familiar heaviness settle into my chest. I thought about my family, the way they had so casually dismissed my trauma, and it made my stomach twist. Mom's words, just act normal, looped in my mind, each repetition a jab at my sanity. I tried to distract myself, long walks along the shore, reading, writing in my journal, listening to the wind. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw him there, smiling, laughing, sitting at the Christmas table like he had the right to be anywhere. Like I had no claim to my own home, my own holidays, my own peace. I sank to the sand one evening, letting the cold grains press against my palms, my fingers digging in as though I could anchor myself to something real. Tears slid down my cheeks, hot and unrelenting. I felt utterly alone. The guilt gnawed at me head. I abandoned my family. Was I overreacting? Should I just suck it up and go back? But the fear, the memories of everything he had done, screamed louder. I whispered into the wind, the words raw and trembling. I can't, I won't, I shouldn't have to. The ocean roared back, indifferent, but somehow, its relentless crashing felt like it understood me more than anyone else ever had. In that moment, curled up on the sand, I hit my rock bottom low. No warm Christmas lights, no forgiving smile from Mom. No comfort, just the cold wind, the endless waves, and the truth that I had to save myself, even if it meant walking away forever. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in blood-red streaks, I realized there was no going back. The next morning, the sun rose over the water, casting gold and pink across the waves, and for the first time in days I felt a flicker of clarity. Sitting on the porch, coffee in hand, I realized something I hadn't fully admitted. I didn't need my family to validate me. I didn't need to endure their ignorance or their insistence that I pretend everything was fine. My safety, my peace, my sanity, they were mine. And I had the right to protect them. I thought about the past. About the abuse, about the Christmases I had forced myself through, the meals I had eaten with a knot of dread in my stomach. Every year I had swallowed my fear. Every year I had hidden behind a smile. Every year I had believed family mattered more than my own well-being. But now, the wind on my face and the salt on my skin made the truth undeniable. I mattered more than any tradition, any expectation, any sense of guilt they tried to heap on me. I walked along the shoreline, letting the cold water lap at my ankles, and made a promise to myself. I would no longer shrink to make them comfortable. I would no longer let anyone abuser or enabler dictate my peace. The thought felt terrifying, but it also felt liberating. I realized I could rewrite what Christmas meant for me, even if it meant doing it alone. As I sat on a driftwood log, horizon stretching endlessly, I let myself imagine a life where I could celebrate on my terms, quiet mornings with coffee, long walks on the sand, the freedom to breathe without fear. My heart, still heavy with anger and sadness, began to feel lighter. I could almost believe that healing was possible, that I could reclaim my holidays without anyone else dictating the rules. And yet, even in this newfound clarity, a small, stubborn question lingered in the back of my mind. Could I ever face them again? Or had this moment of empowerment created a permanent divide? By the fifth day, I realized I couldn't stay in hiding forever, not if I wanted to truly reclaim my life. I needed some form of closure, not for them, not for the abuser, but for me. The thought of picking up my phone to text Mom made my stomach twist, but I knew I had to set boundaries, make my feelings clear, and finally put my foot down. I typed, slowly, carefully choosing each word, "Mom, I'm not coming home for Christmas. I can't. I can't be around him, and I can't pretend that everything is fine. I hope you understand that this is about my safety and my mental health. I love you, but I need to protect myself." My fingers trembled as I hovered over the send button, afraid of the fallout, afraid of the silence that might follow, but I pressed it anyway. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed. A reply from Mom. I don't know what to say. I didn't think it would be like this. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of frustration and relief. She finally acknowledged my feelings, even if awkwardly. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. I wasn't asking for approval or forgiveness. I was claiming my own space, asserting my right to feel safe, and for the first time, I could do it without guilt. I spent the rest of the day on the porch, the ocean stretching endlessly before me, letting the waves and wind wash over the tension in my chest. Every memory of past Christmases, the forced smiles, the fear, the unspoken rules, felt like they were finally slipping away. I realized I didn't need them to understand me fully. I didn't need to be invited to act normal or to tolerate what had hurt me. And for the first time in years, I felt a quiet, unshakable strength. I had chosen myself, my peace, my sanity, and even if Mom never fully understood, even if my family never truly acknowledged the damage, I had reclaimed my life. But as the Sun dipped into the horizon, painting the water gold and crimson. A small, lingering thought nudged me. Was this freedom enough? Or had I only just begun to rebuild what I had lost? By the time Christmas morning arrived, I was sitting on the sand, wrapped in a thick blanket, watching the sun rise over the waves. The beach was quiet, the only sounds the crashing surf and the distant call of gulls. No twinkling lights, no smells of roast turkey or cookies. No forced laughter, just me, the horizon, and the freedom I'd fought so hard to claim, I realized. In that serene moment, that this was my Christmas now. A holiday of choice, of peace, of self-respect. I brewed a cup of coffee, letting the warmth seep into my hands, and smiled faintly. The ache for family, for tradition, was still there, like a ghost hovering in the edges of my mind. But it no longer had the power to control me. I could acknowledge it, feel it, and still keep moving forward. I realized that healing wasn't about forgiveness, or even reconciliation. It was about reclaiming my life and refusing to let anyone take my peace away again. As the morning unfolded, I walked along the shoreline, toes sinking into wet sand, wind whipping through my hair. I imagined laughter that belonged to me, moments I could enjoy without fear, without guilt. I thought of friends who had supported me, strangers who would read this story and feel less alone. And I felt a quiet, fierce sense of connection to the world beyond my pain. And then I laughed softly, a sound I hadn't made in years. The kind of laugh that feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time, I understood what it meant to celebrate. Not the family I had, not the holidays I had been forced to endure, but the one I was creating for myself. The horizon stretched endlessly, golden and vast. And I realized something profound. I didn't need anyone else to define my happiness. I had my freedom, my boundaries, my peace, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, undeniably whole. And as the waves lapped at my feet, I whispered to myself, "This is mine. I will never let anyone take it away again."